when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Singer Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alz. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Donald.
Yes. Here's a huge question. How are things?
Yeah, it is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's been a little while since I've recorded because my mother's been going through her transition, which is a nice way of saying she's dying, and been my worst fear in my whole life. Like, I think my biggest fear of my entire life. And so my mom did pass away on July 17th at 1:50 p.m., which was so apropos of my mother to do it at a very nice, very kind hour. That's what she would say. Well, if I'm going to pass, let's do it in the middle of the day. Why did people have to come out in the middle of the night, right? Because that would be my mother. Very thoughtful, yes. And, you know, obviously every part of my mom's journey has been such an important part of what I do with my life now, and it keeps informing how I move forward, and not in the least has been her death, which is informing how I move forward and with my community, with my life, and with where I think my calling is really. So it's weird, and I think I wanted to rush into this episode because this has been my biggest fear of losing my mom. As you all know, I could have cried at just think of my mom not here on this earth, and tears would well up. If someone was talking about their mother not here, I'm tearing up with them. And being with my mom on this really hard last 6 months of her life, trying to fight the system, and her being pushed towards a ending that was a bit or a lot, you know. What's a nice way of saying it, Dawn? It was
hastened,
if you will. Yeah. It really dawned on me when my mom finally passed away that how different this feeling feels than I thought it would, what I predicted. And it feels wildly different and frighteningly different because, and even my children thought, Mom's going to be in a fetal position. She's not going to be able to get out of her room. What are we going to do? Like, we got to be there for her. I'm sure you did too, Dawn. You were probably...
Absolutely. I just based on, the relation, not only the relationship you had with you, the relationship you had with even the thought of death.
Mm-hmm. That's true too.
And then, that because, it does remind you of things. And so, I absolutely thought that I was not going to see you, Susie, the real you, for I didn't know how long, whether it was 3 months or 3 years, I did not know.
Right.
And it's been quite a different experience.
So different.
When people ask me about you and say, how's she doing? I go, well, I don't know everything that's going on inside because I don't even think you do, but remarkably well.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the path that you took and the journey you took.
And good pharmaceuticals. I'm kidding.
Always.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I really am kidding. I wish I was that type of person. I can't even drink well. Like, I can't drink when I'm
so
depressed.
Much easier, yeah.
Right? I wish I could
so
go,
I
need a cocktail. No, I would do a cocktail and then I'd be like a blubbering fool, and then I'm tired. Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't really help me, unfortunately. But, yeah, and so the reason why I thought this was important to rush into this episode was because I'm so raw in the middle of this grief process, which I really haven't, given myself the opportunity. I didn't want to look into what grief was all about. I lost my father when I was 16 in a plane crash, which is like a completely different death, obviously, than this long runway called Alzheimer's, which is called the longest goodbye. And so I had no idea what it was going to feel like. I couldn't even imagine. And the reason being is, I finally delved into it and did my deep dive like I do. And it's what I suspected. I mean, the grief with dementia and Alzheimer's as a caregiver is just completely different than any other kind of grief. There's aspects of it, of other grief within it, but there's unique qualities and characteristics of this grief that really are they really become the standard for this kind of grief. And we're also going to have one of my favorite people on today. She is one of my favorite people next to you.
And I kind of am okay with her.
Yeah.
She's
No, we love
whatever.
her. Rosanne Corcoran, who's, first of all, she's my new BFF sister. I love this woman so much. I wouldn't be able to speak right now if it wasn't for her. She has been my rock and next to Dawn through this whole process. And I'm telling you, folks, we've never met in person, but I couldn't be closer to this person. I couldn't. Thank God for the internet. Thank God, because now I'm going to cry. Now I'm getting mushy.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
So I mean, so I met Roseanne. She's such a pillar in our community of caregivers. She was given the honor of being Caregiver of the Year last year, 2021. She is the host of a podcast called Daughterhood the Podcast. Wait, the list goes on. And she's a Daughterhood Circle leader, which is a support group for people, caregivers with Alzheimer's, caring for Alzheimer's. And it might be wrong. It might be other things as well. Let me ask my producer.
We can find out.
We'll
when
find
we talk
out.
to her,
Okay.
yeah.
And then we'll
Find out.
And also, she works with Judy Cornish, who is a mutual friend of ours within this community that we respect so much. Judy also gave me tools to navigate this journey that resonated with me down to my bones, and I love her too. And of course, Roseanne is a support group leader for Judy Cornish's program called the Dawn Method, which is Dementia Alzheimer's Wellness Network. It's a whole different framework of how you look at dementia, how we process it. It's incredible. It's forward thinking, and it's correct. It makes sense. So Roseanne lost her mother with Alzheimer's a little over a year ago. So she's been on the other side prepping me for this in such a phenomenal way. I just wish for all of you to have somebody like Roseanne in your life, and who will be there for you and laugh when you need to laugh, and cry when you need to cry, and be strong and freaking psychic. She's psychic. Like, I could be, I'm like literally having like a bad moment, walking to my car, and I get a text, "Are you okay?" I'm telling you, there's something.
It's called being a stalker. No, it's
Anyway, without further ado, let me bring on and introduce Saint Rosanne Corcoran.
Greetings, Roseanne.
Thank you. Greetings. Thank you. I'm blushing. Thank you. My goodness, that's quite an intro. Thank you, Susie. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and real and true.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I have to thank you, because I was trying to, and this is part of the thing we're going to talk about today. I didn't know how to do what I think I needed to do for Susie. And because you've gone through it already, and because of the person you are, your value is through the roof for both Susie and me, and to me too. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're part of the family. You are our
Thank you.
family.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, go on. Say
No, I was
talk.
going to say it was. I mean, it was an honor for me to be with you, to go through that process. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't. There's nothing it's panic, and it was an honor for me, and
Thank you.
I just think you guys are great. So
thank you.
Well,
You too.
and, we get angels when you need them, and I am not ooh-you, but I want to be ooh-you. I wish I was more ooh-you, but we do get angels just at the right time, and like I said, Roseanne and Judy, and then another one of our colleagues, Trish Lobb, who almost 2 years ago was a guest on our podcast and told me, "You're going to be fine. By the time your mom," she said, "I promise you it's going to be one of the most beautiful experiences you've ever experienced." And I was like, this lady's wackadoo. Like, I'm jumping in the grave with my mom when this happens, and she doesn't know who she's talking to. And lo and behold, it's one of the most ethereal, moments of my life, how it all played out finally, ultimately. But that's not to say I am not bone tired and exhausted from the past 16 years. I mean, bone tired. So we'll get into it. So, and when I decided to do this episode, I wanted, of course, Roseanne, because she is a year into this, and it is so different still. Like, when I was doing research and was sharing it with her, and she was like, that's exactly what I've been going through. I just didn't have a name for it.
Yep.
And when you're going through all those feelings and all those emotions, you just, it's too much to even think about researching or am I normal, or is this right, and there's judgment and people, expectations, and there's a lot of lovely things, and then there's a lot of hard things that you have to insulate from. So Oh, Siri's talking to me.
Hello.
I don't know why. He's very needy, my Siri. See, he's working on it. He just said that. He's working on it.
Wow,
Okay, keep working on that, okay?
And one of the things
He's really annoying.
Wow. Okay, shut him up.
Wow.
I'm trying to, but I'm trying to close it down. Okay.
Okay.
There.
One of the things, and we'll cover this, I think, coming up, is that when you're going through whatever you're going through, you think you're the only one. You think, because everyone is unique, and their relationship with their family member or friend or whatever is unique, yet it manifests in a very, very same way, and there's reasons for that. And that's what we're going to talk about today, and the different stages.
Yep.
And also, I want to just preface that, in addition to grieving for someone with Alzheimer's, Roseanne and I share our own unique relationships with our mothers, where not only were we their caregivers, they were our best friends, and we adored our mothers. We adore our mothers. We still adore them. And, there are those situations and times where, it's a different frame, where someone hasn't had the best relationship and and that really changes how you go into caregiving, if you go into caregiving, and how you feel about the whole process and when they pass away, depending if you are able to tie things up in time. So we're talking about it from this perspective, and we acknowledge that there are other perspectives in this type of grief. But at the core, there's still a lot of the sameness as a caregiver for anybody with this disease. So today we're calling this Dementia Grief Passover. We're going to handle it just like a Passover, because it's that big of a topic. So grab some coffee or a drink or some, I don't know, kombucha, whatever. But it's going to be worth it. You're going to want to know all this information. So honestly, if you need to shut us off and come back, come back. So we're going to talk about this, and we're going to, like, if you haven't been to a Seder, we're going to do it similar to a Seder. And so we'll the oldest male, that would be Dawn begins.
And we're going to share, we're going to pass it and then read another part, and we're going to, in hopes that your grief passes over. Thank you. Really.
I have never been to a Seder.
Well, now you have.
I've been
you
to Sunday
haven't?
Italian dinner, so
Yeah, there's less
sort of
food
kind of-
in this Seder. There's less food than in the other kind, but
Gotcha.
Right.
you get a sense.
What is dementia grief, Dawn? Why don't
Well,
you tell us what it is?
Okay, so we're going to give you a brief overview of dementia grief and how it differs from normal grief. Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia are unique disease processes in that the person with the disease dies what is referred to by Alzheimer's families as two deaths. The slow psychological receding of the person they know over the years, and eventually the physical death. Some caregivers of a person with dementia find that they have grieved the loss of a person for so long that they don't have strong feelings of grief when the person dies. Others do experience a range of emotional reactions that might include feeling numb, denial of the situation, shock and pain even when the death was expected, relief for both the person and the person who has dementia, and the caregiver. There's guilt, there's sadness, there's feelings of isolation, and a sense of lack of purpose.
That's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's three different kinds of grief that we as caregivers go through and experience, either 1, 2, 3, all of them at the same time, or some combination thereof. So I'm going to talk about the three kinds of loss that we feel, right? There's several essential characteristics of grief that are associated with Alzheimer's and or any kind of dementia that occur at the same time, and this is what sets this experience of grief apart from what they call common grief, and that's not to minimize anyone else's grief. That grief is grief, and grief sucks. So, and these elements are as followed. The first kind of loss, and I really related to all of these. The first is called a compounded loss, and that loss occurs in Alzheimer's disease. There's so many losses. You have loss of memories and identifying traits, the loss of the person's self, their ability to drive and cook and make their own decisions, right? Sometimes it's really slow, and then all of a sudden you can get a flurry of changes that happen where you're suddenly taking on a bunch of responsibilities that you weren't prepared to yet, or you didn't even know you had to. I remember, okay, this is going to be very personal. I remember the first time when my mom was incontinent and I had taken her to a family dinner and I had to take her to the restroom, and I hadn't dealt with that incontinence. That was the first time the roles switched at that point in such a obvious way. I remember that being daunting to me and not being prepared for it. When you embrace it, you go, okay, this is lovely what I'm doing for my mom. This is to make her feel okay and still have her dignity, to have her own daughter be there for her and nobody else when I can. So it became I looked at it differently. But that takes the time it takes. We don't know this is going to happen when we're growing up. Right. But when we have Spitfire moms like you and I have, Roseanne, right? And Dawn. We have moms that are like, bye-bye, doing this, going here, hello world, I'm the life of the party, right? And then they're starting to, their dignity is, or their frame of social dignity is beginning to chip away.
But it may not serve their dignity either, the fact that their child is doing this for them. Some people may not want that. They would rather have a stranger do it for them, and so that's tough to navigate if that is the situation. That is a reality also.
All those changes. So it's like Don once said it's like whack-a-mole. That's what you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole at all times, because just when you get that change handled, bang, then another change comes up and goes blah, 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 and then it's going so fast sometimes. And that's the concept of I think compounded loss, is this constant change. You're in change. It's changing, and you can barely keep up with it. Yeah. So you have to really figure out a way to just expect change and expect that you're not going to know exactly what that change is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
so
that
prepare
you're going to deal
yourself
with
that
it.
you're not going to know. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to deal with it when it comes up. And that's the challenge of dementia and Alzheimer's is to try to plan for the future, but not be stuck in the future and not be stuck in the past and be right in the present. And that's part of the challenge, because it's hard, because you need to plan, but you can't stay over there because it makes you crazy sometimes. It makes you like, well, how am I going to do this? What is going to happen? You have to be here, because here is where your person is, and here is where you're going to make that connection. Right.
And planning you don't sometimes you don't know what you're planning for.
That's
you
what
have no idea
because you don't know what's next.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. You don't
Yeah.
know what's next. And also sometimes some solutions that you think might be helpful can fail miserably. And you have to also realize that you can't take that personally, and that's hard.
Right.
I remember I made this awesome book for my mom in the early middle stages when she was living with me, an Apple book and I scanned everything from all of her scrapbooks and all her family photos, and I made it the story of Lovey, right? And my mom, like, we looked at it maybe once or twice, and it was like she couldn't concentrate on it. Mm-mm. It was like, and she liked it when I showed it to her, but she's not going to remember to pick it up.
No.
She wasn't going to remember that it was even there, because every time I showed it to her, she'd go, "Oh, you made this? This is awesome."
Which was your reason for making it? You said, "Oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get this result." And
right.
Of course
So you have to change your expectations. I tell my daughters that all the time. You cannot live your life doing things and then expecting a result, because 90% of the time, maybe 99% of the time, you're going to be disappointed. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. So, especially in dementia and Alzheimer's care, right?
Yeah. Just got to go. You just got to go with it.
Which causes stress and grief. that causes stress.
Right.
Being
Exactly.
disappointed. That causes more stress, and then you may be making your next decision based off of that.
Right.
And that's the whack-a-mole. That's you're chasing. I'll do that, then I'll do that,
And then you could get to the point, which I could see if you're exhausted. It's like, well, what's the point? Nothing seems, I don't know what works, and maybe nothing does work. Maybe it's just something that maybe your person requires something completely different, and maybe you just have to see and look and see what works for them.
And sometimes it's not a matter of doing something, of doing.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a matter of being. And sometimes just being there is what, that's it. That's the magic.
That is the magic. 100%. Yep.
Because if they don't understand or remember anything else, they just know that they're not alone.
Exactly.
When you're there. They know because you're right in front of them. Even if they don't know who you are.
Exactly.
Even if they've forgotten who you are, they know somebody's there.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And if you're there enough, you will see them and they will see you.
Well,
that's the gift of that. That is the gift of it. They will.
They will. And my mother said to my sister one time, "You see her?" And my sister was like, "Yeah." And she was like, I feel like I know her really well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
What more can you ask for at that point,
Yeah.
I know. That's the
caregiving.
gifts
That's
you
comfort.
get. And I know, God, I have no idea, because my mom started losing her speech, right? Like 5 months ago. But 2.5 months ago, out of nowhere, she just said, "I love you."
Oh my gosh.
I don't know who, and hopefully, maybe she thought she knew I was Susie. I'm pretty sure she knew it was me, but maybe not me in the way that I think of me. whatever the case may be. It could have been, here
She
comes
loved
that
you.
nutty nut job girl that comes in and doesn't shut up. Here comes Razzmatazz dancing and singing. Oh my God, I'm going to be tired when she leaves, but I like her.
Yeah,
And she brings me juice.
exactly.
Yeah. And those were the last words she said. She said that, that was 2.5, 3 months ago, though she said it clear as day. She hadn't been speaking before that. She didn't speak again after that. And she said that. I think she
so
knew.
too. I think so too.
I'm going to say, I'll go with that.
Totally. Go with that.
I'm going with
Now, are you sure she said it clear? She might have just said, I love juice, but I don't know.
Dawn.
That might have been what she said.
But
Just a thought.
Cry emoji. All right, so the second type of loss is called ambiguous loss, and that refers to a significant loss that is lacking in clarity. So it's kind of what we're talking about, but it's defining it even further, where it's something that you're losing, but you don't have a normal sense of closure with it. So it's broken down into two types of ambiguous loss. And the first one is where somebody is physically absent but remains psychologically present. And I immediately go to my ex-husband who just left and abandoned. I say that is an ambiguous loss because there is no closure. There will never be closure. And they call it leaving without saying goodbye.
Yeah.
And some of the examples are divorce or a child of divorce, what they experience, prisoners of war, people who are missing in action, victims of disasters, where there just simply is no possibility for closure. Yeah. So that's a horrible kind of loss because there's
where they can't find the body. There's no body to bury.
Right.
It's just
they're gone.
They're gone.
So there's no closure. And then it relates very specifically to Alzheimer's as well, which I'll explain in a second. The second type of ambiguous loss is when your person remains physically present, but they're psychologically absent. And that's the goodbye without leaving. And that's what really relates to dementia and Alzheimer's, because they're here, but who we knew is gone. So we keep re-meeting this person, and having to meet them where they're at, and that's the hard part, because even if we are open and accepting, Roseanne, like you were, and it's still difficult. It still puts you on that liminal threshold where you go, okay, what do I need now? Okay, got it. All right,
Absolutely.
and it's freaking hard. It is hard, and it's and they really say that this is prominently something that you find in Alzheimer's disease. It's difficult to grieve someone who's no longer psychologically present, like a spouse. I always think of a spouse, how hard that must be. All the other, and I talk to people that are losing their spouse, the intimacy and all those other, elements that play into your relationship, and those unspoken communications that only you two share that get lost. Those are sad moments. So a parent, a companion, and being intimate, someone who remains physically present who has ever increasing needs for care that has to be met. Mm-hmm. So you're losing, and then you're having to step up even further. And since the person with this disease usually changes gradually, albeit they do change it quickly, but it's also gradual, it's not possible for family members to determine a specific point at which point their loved one is no longer who they once were at that point. Yep. If that makes sense, right? So it's hard. Sometimes it is gradual. And I remember Lisa Gibbons saying to me when I had lunch with her when my mom was first diagnosed, and we were introduced through a mutual friend, and she said, "Your mom is going to change before you know it. Take video, take pictures, because it feels like she's never going to change, and then suddenly she's changed. And I remember driving home that day going, she's wrong. My mom, she's not going to change. Like, that's her mom. Yeah. No, it happens. And I'm so grateful for Liz's advice, and she couldn't have been more correct. I mean, it is. It's that kind of thing where right before you just go, wait, I remember asking my mom, do you know what day it is? No, I don't.
Nope.
And you're like, okay, good. There's, and those were the very beginning stages, but it was like, and you learn how to deal with it.
And you think you can, and as you've experienced, you think you can overcome it. You think you can talk them into knowing it again and teach them and all those things, and then you realize that makes the loss even harder. That makes it. That's before the lean-in state. That's a natural way to go. Yeah. It's like, no, I'll just remind them, and they'll know.
Ours will be different. Ours will be different. Yeah. I can fix this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're
special.
Yeah.
We're special.
The other people didn't really try.
Right.
I got your back, Mom. I told her we're gonna
figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, and I think too, part of it, the really hard part is that loss of speech, because you don't have that back and forth. And it makes it so much harder.
It does. Yes, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I think that is one of the biggest setbacks that we have, or handicaps that we have as caregivers, because we don't have the luxury of being able to speak to our person, especially even at end of life, where there's such big questions and such a responsibility on you as the caregiver, which I experienced, of making all these decisions without really knowing if my mom's in pain, if my mom would like to check out, if my mom is hungry, if she's this. It's so difficult to navigate. And I learned a language. I learned nonverbal language with her, and I know that it exists. It exists with mothers and babies. That's how we communicate. We don't communicate. They don't speak, but we know.
We know.
We know. It's there. We can do that. You just have to allow yourself to, and believe that that you have those intuitions. If you love this person, or if you're just a person with empathy, you're going to see, you'll see the signs. They're human beings.
Yep, absolutely.
Babies don't speak, but they feel pain and they feel joy. And people with dementia may not speak, but they feel pain and they feel joy. And they can communicate it.
Yeah. I mean, and the babies, they'll sometimes communicate with a cry or this or that.
Yes.
And you start learning the language. You start learning the subtleties of a look. And I think even your daughter, I think Joey said, Mom, you're so much more in tune than anyone with her, that you see things we don't. You see a little something in her eye or look at this or that you know what that is. We don't, and it's creating a new language.
So true. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I would see her eyes. I could see a smile in her eyes. I could see the pain in her eyes. I could see when she was swooning to the music or laughing at me, right?
Same.
And I was like, I felt like, I really did feel like Wonder Woman, just to myself, nobody else. Just I felt so happy that I had, I thought, conquered that chasm.
Yeah. I mean, it's it comes from a hand squeeze or this or that, and you just know what that means. And this is very difficult though, because especially towards end of life, even if they have a directive, you don't know if maybe they changed their mind, maybe they don't want that anymore. And with Alzheimer's, dementia, they can never tell you that. ever again. So it puts the burden on you to make those decisions. And I know that was a large point of stress for you, Susie, during the last 6 months specifically. And I don't know there's no solution for that yet. So now you have to learn how to manage it and how to internally manage it. But unfortunately, there's no great answer for that.
Challenging. It's the challenge. Go on, Roseanne. What were you going to say?
No, and that's what leads to more grief in the after.
Yes.
Because you didn't have that conversation, because you couldn't have that conversation, because
Right.
you couldn't say, Ma, is this what you want? Like, there was none of that. And that's
None of
what
it.
then starts playing in your mind after the fact.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
They
exactly, if I had to say what was the hardest part for me, it was making that decision to finally go into hospice and allow her to exit. And I had to be sure that she was ready. I had to know that, because my mom loved to live. And my mom, up until a month ago, was even in the shitty state that she was in, she was getting joy out of life when the family was there, and it should have been a lot different, but that's a whole nother show. But I know my mom I know when she was ready.
Yeah.
I think I do. I mean, I that's why I had to work so hard. I had to work hard and my mom, by the way, I've said this before, when she was in her, full glory, she would say, Susie, like, I don't want to go into any of this. I've had a great life, done it all, dee. And, and I always thought, okay. And then when we got there, my mom wasn't the same woman anymore. She didn't have that bravado of being younger and being able to say that. And I would say to my mom, how you doing today, Mommy? Like, right in the smack middle of Alzheimer's, and she'd go, I'm great. I'm alive. And I thought, she doesn't want to die. She doesn't want to die. And this is the other lady. This is who, as all of the layers start peeling away, they become their core. And what if she just looked at me and said, not good? Because that's why I always checked in with her. I always would say, how are you today? Because I was looking for the sign. Yeah, I was looking for the sign.
And it can go the opposite too. Yeah, and it can go the opposite too. Like, some people say, do everything you can to keep me alive forever. And then, but you have no idea if they're like going,
except
oh,
for
no,
this.
no.
Except for this I have.
I didn't mean that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to include that.
Right.
Like Dawn's mother literally has a directive that is like,
she's just like,
whatever it takes.
Keep me alive.
Wow.
Keep me alive. But the thing is, you don't know it then towards the end, because especially they can't even tell you if they're in pain, short of, if they're really in wailing pain. They might just be going, my God, will you please stop this? And it's such a burden. It's such a burden. And, in our society, we don't have that option.
But you still, but it doesn't solve the problem, Don, of the decision.
It doesn't.
So that
because
burden
you don't
on
know,
people
because you don't know.
of caregivers.
Yep.
That can't communicate with their, with verbally with their person, that is such a source of stress and sadness and
stress.
It's a heavy responsibility. And I kept trying to tell the doctors and the hospice people, it's like, you're asking me to make a decision that I can't make fully until I know exactly where she is. I have to be there. I have to see her. I can't. You're asking me I can't put my dog down. I'm not going to just willy-nilly make a decision for someone's.
Right.
Yeah.
Just go, let's just end it. Yeah.
Right.
And especially during COVID, you were not able to.
No.
You couldn't be in the room with her. How could you even? You couldn't do it over Zoom.
And that's why I had her at full code for so long, because it wasn't that I wanted them to, keep her alive with extraordinary. Yeah, I didn't want her on a ventilator for the rest of her life, but I wanted to be the one to make the decision.
Right.
I didn't want someone else to make the decision and say, well, she was in life support, so we took her off because that was her directive. Not when everybody's different.
Well,
And that is and that is that's the difference between Alzheimer's and normal caregiving.
Yep.
That's probably.
I want to
biggest
add some
difference
humor.
right there.
So, Dawn, why don't you do it? Why don't you tell a quick story? This is a quick aside, and it really illustrates the difference between caregiving for somebody with dementia at end of life and someone that doesn't. Esther, our friend's mother, who was a Spitfire like our mothers, but didn't have dementia.
Yes, very, very similar. Didn't have mind was fully there, full pop, but she had cancer and she was very ill, and it was a long road, and finally towards the very end, they said, okay, you're basically, you got an hour.
She wanted it.
Goodbye.
She had decided she goes, no more. I don't.
She wanted it. She was like, I'm done. Don't give me anything. Take me off all the stuff. And they said, okay, you're gonna probably.
She asked how
and
long.
So, the family said their goodbyes. They said about an hour. They family said their goodbyes. Only her husband stayed, and he stayed with her, and just waited. And it's an hour. She's still alive.
2 hours.
I think it's now 2 hours still alive. 3 hours later, the doctor comes in and she goes, when the fuck am I going to die already? You said it's an hour.
It's been
When am I going? It's been 3 hours. What the hell's going on?
She's just, there's Esther. That is Esther to a T. And, I could imagine my mom doing that if she was in her right mind. You know what I mean?
And that's the difference.
That's the difference.
Where that's the difference on the effect of the caregiver and the family.
And that's
members.
the gift.
Right.
The gift she gave the family was like,
Yeah.
I am ready, family. Family didn't want to let her go, by the way. Family was not happy about it.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine what
To release.
the weight that she was able to take away from her family.
Roseanne, what was your experience at the end? Did you know?
It was a week turnaround. The Wednesday before she passed, I think she had a little stroke. And Saturday she was in a lot of pain. And when I called hospice, they said, give morphine. And I was like, oh God, I got the morphine, and I stood downstairs and I thought I was going to kill her. Like, that's what I thought. I thought I was going to give her the morphine and she was going to die. And I was in a panic. And I remember coming up and I said to her, she was awake, and I said, Mom, you're in this pain. If I give you this, it's probably going to help you, but it might knock you out. Do you want it? And she nodded her head. And I thought, well, thank God, because I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was full out in a panic. And I gave her the morphine. Mm-hmm. She did not die. It didn't help her pain. And we went like this for another 5 days. And then she couldn't get comfortable. She got into a position. She was stuck in that position. I couldn't move her. When the hospice nurse came and we turned her over, her blood pressure had dropped. Her pulse rate had dropped. And I thought I was looking at the counter, and I thought it said 52. It said 25. And the hospice nurse said, Roseanne, she's dying. And I was like, wait, what? Like, hold on. She was just, wait, I called on my siblings, and by the end of the night, then, 5 hours later, she was gone. But that's where it was a shock. Like I said, I didn't know how long we were going to go on. I didn't know how long this was going to be, but I certainly didn't expect it that day.
Right. Yeah.
And she had lost her speech.
Right.
She had lost her speech 3 weeks before. But we were still communicating because, like you said, Susie, you're able to communicate. Eyes do 1,000 things. But
sure,
I don't know what I would have done had
yeah.
she not said yes, she wanted the morphine that first time. And then I felt that opened the door. That was permission then for me to continue to give her that morphine that did not touch her pain. So, but I know that if I wouldn't have, and then
Right.
something would have happened, if she
Right.
wouldn't have said yes and I gave it to her and she did die, I would have never been able to forgive myself, even though there was no going backwards. And I think that's the part where, as caregivers, we get caught up with that. Like, well, I did this and they died. No, no, no. They were dying. You know, you're trying to be with them in this moment where this is the end of their life. It doesn't matter what you do. This is the end of their life. But as caregivers, because we're caring and we're doing and we're in charge, we carry that then for the rest of our lives, thinking, well, what did I not see something? Could I have done this better? Well, what if I would have done something sooner? And those are those what ifs that then add to your grief. When in reality, you were there. You were the person. You were caring for them.
Yeah, more than most situations. Yeah, in any other situation. I mean, and that flows really well into the third and final type of grief, which is anticipatory grief, which we experience nonstop. So, you know, I'll read this to you. Grieving our parents can start before they die. Anticipatory grief is a natural form of grieving that occurs before a loss. So it can happen in other kinds of diseases, because if someone's told they have a terminal cancer, there's a bit of an anticipatory grief. But we live it because we don't know, because we can't communicate. So it can precede the loss of a job, a house, a marriage, a dream, but it often occurs when a loved one is stolen by aging or disease. The anticipatory grief causes you to mourn the person that they were, all the things that they missed or are going to miss. I had that. My daughter's pregnant again, and I thought, if only she could hang on. So there, you know, and I was thinking, is that selfish of me? There's just so many things that play into it. And it also gives you this feeling of impotence. Like you said, there's nothing we can do. There's no going back.
Yeah, what do you mean?
And you know it's coming, and you know, you just don't know exactly how or when. Like, you didn't know exactly. You were like, what? What, today? Right? Even doesn't matter. Like, like we're so there with them. And I went home at 3 a.m. to get a couple hours sleep, and like, thank God the nurse called me to tell me that my mom, her blood pressure had dropped, and I just dropped everything and ran back. But I didn't know. I had no idea. And we know that my mom went through this 5 months ago. We thought she was going to die then. So those things happen with Alzheimer's. So there is so much anticipatory grief, and that keeps you in a constant state of adrenaline.
Which makes it really hard to function in your everyday life. How can you function? That's all that you're thinking about, because you are just, and especially like you, Susie, you know, your father passed in a very, very different way, you know, and so there was no anticipation with that one, you know. But the fact that he did pass, you know, it's like, you know, you're waiting. What's going to drop next? You know, when's the other shoe going to drop? You know, because of just past experiences, and really doesn't matter what those are. You still have to deal with the fact that you don't know when it's going to happen, and that's a very sincere form of grief. I remember that stage when you were in that stage, and that was, you know, which was a long time. It was, you know, it was a long time. And that was you didn't know it, but you just were like, okay, I think maybe now, I think tonight, I think tomorrow. And that's meaning all you're thinking about. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. And then it should be no surprise to us that in our grief, we're just, you know, swirling because of all of that and all of that stress and all of the anxiety and everything. And then afterwards, it's not like you go, okay, I'm good, let's go. That's not how this works, because your body is still fighting. And that's the hard part in that after, that, you know, insomnia, you're still anxious, you're still exhausted. All of that comes to play. I'm still not sleeping right 14 months later. I'm still not sleeping right.
I think because some of this stuff, there's, is there a solution? Is there something I can do to combat this or reverse this? And in a lot of cases, there isn't. It is just what it is. And sometimes just the knowledge of it,
Yeah.
that it exists, so you don't feel like you're crazy, that is helpful. But there really is
being
no
compassionate with yourself.
real solution for a lot of this.
Okay, if you don't feel like doing something, then don't do it. If you can't put yourself out to do something, then don't. Allow yourself, give yourself that grace to take those moments to be okay. Do you know, my niece had her baby shower a month after my mother died.
Yes.
I did not go. I couldn't go. And my first thought was, well, you have to go. And then I was like, I can't go. I can't interact. I don't want to be out in that world yet. And I didn't. But you have to allow yourself those moments. You have to allow yourself that opportunity to try to get back to some sort of center for yourself. Do you know you're allowed?
And that should also come without guilt. The guilt is, I think, what drives most of this stress. The fact that I shouldn't be laughing right now. I shouldn't be enjoying myself. I shouldn't take time for myself. And you become so selfless that it hurts you. And in the long run, as the caregiver, if you're hurting as a caregiver, you're not the best caregiver you can be. So you have to try to do it without guilt and take care of yourself.
It's a shouldectomy. You have to have a shouldectomy.
Well, yeah.
You have to. It's for them too.
No more shoulds.
A shouldectomy? Yeah.
A shouldectomy, yeah.
Oh, a shouldectomy. I thought you said a shouldectomy. You do that too. Let us pass the Seder book over to Roseanne to tell us about the 3 states of grief.
Separation, liminality, and reemergence. I never really thought about it, but it makes perfect sense. State of separation, obviously, is a person in a state of separation when they suffer a significant loss. Each loss is experienced as a separation from the person with dementia, from the life one has lived in the past, and from an anticipated future. So, I don't know if everybody thinks of it in that way, that it's an actual separation. Do you know?
Right.
And it is all along the way. And it says that not only is it important that family members educate themselves on dementia, but also find a community of support where you can share your grief honestly with a sense of safety. And I'm fully support any type of support.
Yes, you are.
Yes,
you do. You walk the talk, my friend. Yes, you do.
Absolutely. Because there's nothing like saying something or feeling something and actually having the courage to share that.
Right.
And then have somebody say, but well, stop being a martyr. Or, I don't know why you feel that way. Well, okay. And then that adds to your own isolation. So when you find a group of people that you're sharing the same thing, and you say something like, I don't know, I can't believe they're gone. Yeah. I can't believe I'm numb. Well, of course you're numb. Yes, you're numb. How could you not be numb? It's okay. Or, I haven't cried. Okay. That's okay. Your body has to catch up. Your mind has to catch up. Your emotions, everything that we do as caregivers, you just keep going and things get piled on top. You don't have time to deal with what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and what you're witness as a witness even. You don't have time to, process that. Yeah. And then it's at the end and you're like, wow, well, I didn't process all that stuff. Well, it's still inside of you,
100%. Yeah.
And it's just, it's hard. It's all part of it.
And when you're caregiving, like you said, you're in it. You're in the race. You're in the race. You're sweating. You got blisters. You've got, right? You're just grabbing a drink and you're just making it through. And then when it stops, you go past the finish line and then you feel triumphant. I felt triumphant. I didn't feel joy. I felt triumph. But God knows I have no relationship to what my emotions are right now because I've just been trying to get everything done right.
Yes.
before and after.
Yes. Yes.
And
You're separate. It's almost like you're separate from your body.
Yeah, and you know, some people are lucky; they have a really good support system in terms of family members. Some of us are only children. I'm like an only child, even though I have a sibling, and I know I'm not alone in that.
Well,
and so that can add even more stress to it, especially during the post death and the pre-funeral stage and all that stuff. It can only add to your stress level and your anxiety, because now you're dealing with things that you really don't want to deal with, that are either super painful or just super, super stressful. And it takes a lot. Right?
It does. And it's okay if you don't have those people in your life. You can find them. You know, you can find them because you have to. It's important.
Yeah. It is important, and sometimes those people cannot be, or the people closest to you, because they might be also, if it's a family members, they can be, going through their own thing. If it's a friend like me or other friends, they may not, even if they've done research and all that stuff, they've never experienced it themselves. Let's say they don't know what to say. I've often wanted to just say, "What do you want to hear right now? What would make you feel better?" Because sometimes people say stuff that seems caring and it's just annoying.
Give us an example.
They're in a better place. Okay. They're in a better place right now. That it's not suffering. All those things that it may be true, but it's not what you want to hear. And so that's difficult. And to find people who have gone through it before, at least and everyone's different. They might have a clue as to what's the best thing to say, and maybe more importantly, what not to say.
Right. Nothing that starts with,
because that can add
nothing
to
that starts with "at least."
Oh yeah.
Cross that out.
Well, at least Well, at least she's not.
At least she was 92.
I know. Oh.
Yeah, she had a
good long life.
Yeah. No, at least.
That's a blessing. And all of it's true. It's true, but it's not what you want to hear.
Right. It's not the time for platitudes.
Exactly. And also, again, uniquely to, and maybe not so uniquely to Alzheimer's and dementia, but we have a medical system that is broken. So, a lot of people they're in a better place, but not of their own doing. It wasn't a natural, we have a very faulty system, and we were left as caregivers to navigate that as well as our person. And so it's very complicated. So when you say to someone like Roseanne or myself or anyone of you out there, well, they're in a better place, it does trigger a lot of things for me when someone says that, because what I want to go into is, well, actually, let me tell you a story. 2 hours later, right?
And you're on that path. You're on that path now, and Roseanne might have been on a different path, And so I have a question here that for both of you, which is, Susie, you're 3 weeks out since, and Roseanne, you're a year and
14 months out. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't know if you remember what 3 weeks out felt like. What would you want to hear? What would make you feel better?
I am here. If you want to talk, you can talk. If you want to talk and have me answer, I will do that. If you want to take a walk, if you want to sit, if you want to do whatever, I am here and will do whatever you want me to do. And if that means sitting here and you sit there, so be it. Just an openness, and not a, well, you have to do this. Well, you should be doing, no. I'm lucky I'm standing. I'm lucky that I can make it through my day. And I was in bed at 6:30. 3 weeks after, I was in bed at 6:30. I wasn't sleeping, but I was in bed.
Right.
Because it was like, oh my goodness, what is happening?
Yeah.
And over a year later, do those words would that still be what you want to hear? Or is there
it's different because, everybody's like, hey, it's a year. You better? You feel good? Isn't it great? It's like, no, I don't. And it's, listen, I'm not where I was at week 3, 12 months later. I've gone through that time. And it's not that it's better, it's different. So it's not, I don't think I'm going to run up the steps to tell my mother something. I don't, pull in the driveway and think, oh, I could tell. I don't, that's not there anymore, but it was there.
Right.
And it was hard. Now I'm trying to, now it's like, okay, Roseanne, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do going forward? Because it's different. And while I was caregiving, my kids grew up. They grew up, they grew out. And, life goes on. And then it's like, you say to your husband, oh, hey, I remember you. Did you want to do something? Do you want to go out? Because you didn't have that. So it's a complete relearning. And it takes a little bit,
Right.
Because you do, your relationships
Absolutely.
with everybody change. Every and you have to reestablish those. Susie, so you're 3 weeks out, and you're in a very different state of mind that Roseanne was in. She was in bed by 6:30. You don't.
Yeah, I wasn't asleep. I was just in bed
because you always have something going. So at that stage, or I mean, take it from the time right after it happened to now. What do you want to hear? What would make you feel better? Is it the same, or is it something different?
Yes, and I know just having people to share a bit of what's happened through this journey is helpful. It helps me process it. Just being able to talk about it, just to get it out and verbalize it, articulate it. Like I said, the last 6 months were so harrowing and grueling that anybody that will listen to my story, I feel very cathartic, and it feels good to share it. And I guess it gives me a sense of purpose, to continue advocating in a way. It continues to support what I've been doing. So that makes sense to me. So that feels good. And then I also feel guilty sometimes because I always want to make sure that I'm not dismissing the people that I love too. I want them to know that I'm here for them. I'm not fragile. I'm heartbroken, but I'm not fragile. And I am here if you need me. I am here. That's helpful too, to be helpful. Yeah.
Well, that gives you purpose.
Yeah.
That gives you purpose.
And I want to be that for other people. And it's, I continue, that's just part of who I am. So I don't want people to treat me like I'm fragile, like I said. That's it. Yeah. So I love everything that Roseanne said too. And I think I don't appreciate anybody minimizing the situation because of someone's age or because of their disease. Yep. And I find that clumsy. So that's the only thing I would say is don't minimize.
Don't say,
right.
hey, it's the
or
best
they
thing
had
ever
Alzheimer's.
happened.
Yeah, wow.
It was time.
Because I remember at one time I had a friend who said, is your mom ever going to die? I hope not.
I mean, it's just because people don't know what to say, and they do think they don't. And I guess do you have it in your being to forgive them for those types of comments?
I have.
I mean, so what I'm doing is kind of, for our listeners is to, because I think people just don't
we
know,
need to
and they're
educate.
afraid to say anything. And sometimes what happens is they don't say anything. They don't say anything because they are afraid to say the wrong thing. And I think that's worse.
We had that. Yes.
Is that
we
correct?
had that at the funeral. We had someone who was close to us. I won't say it, but who didn't say anything. And they were there, and I was like, not a word. Yeah. And when I thanked them for coming, they were like, oh, yeah, of course. And that was it. And that was so odd to me. And then, you realize after you process that and you realize they just didn't know what to say, and they felt inept. They didn't feel that they could say anything, and felt that anything they did say was going to be inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Or try.
And I
to
can
make it
understand
uncomfortable.
that.
Yeah.
And it's even, I mean, take it to what's current, social media, the comments varied so much from like literally condolences to an emoji to like these beautiful orations that were just like spectacular. And I think, that's something we should talk about because that's very real. Everyone is going to be responding to the death from one of their friends' family or something. Like, what do you want to read? It's kind of the same thing. Hey, if I'm here for you if you ever want to talk. That may be what I'm hearing is the best thing to hear.
I loved
if
when
you don't know
people
what to say.
acknowledged my mother and said what a great lady she was, and that admired our relationship, or just said what a just when they saw her, that made me feel good. That was like, wow, that was so beautiful that you actually saw who she was and told me about that. And that's so lovely. And even when my father passed away, I remember he was, he traveled all the time because he was in the music industry and he was installing recording studios all over the world. And I got a letter from a man I had never met from Australia that my dad had installed a studio, and he wrote me a letter just to me to tell me how wonderful my dad was and what an incredible human being and what a contribution he was to the world, and that I should just a beautiful letter that stayed with me my whole life because he told me how great my dad was from an adult person, and I think those are beautiful gifts. Yep. Those are flowers that you get.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Roseanne, talk about the next state called the liminal state.
The liminal state. So liminal derives from the Latin word limen, which means threshold. In crossing a threshold, we move from one place or state to another. When one stands in a threshold, however, one is not in either place. Liminality is a state of transition, of being in between a previous situation and an emerging situation. This status of being betwixt and between is an apt description of an experience of ambiguous loss, and thus the liminal state is linked with ambiguity and the receding of the known self.
Right.
Which,
you related to so much. Because you said when I sent you that information, talk about how that hit you.
I used to say that for dementia caregiving, and I would feel like every time my mother changed or we approached a change, it was like being in a doorway. And I would say it's a different threshold. I never knew it's a liminal state. I don't speak Latin, but that it was like an
Carpe
actual
diem,
thing.
Yes, you do. Carpe
Yeah,
diem.
how about that? So I would always say that. It was like being in that transition. But you're not in either place. And what do you do with that? And that's part of that feeling. That's part of these ambiguous feelings that we feel as dementia caregivers because you don't know where to go. You don't know what's coming. You just left this area, which you were like, wow, this is bad. I can't imagine. And then you're like, oh, wait, we're in a new section. And that's continuous. It never stops. It never stops. And that just...
Never stops.
And it's hard.
And sometimes sometimes you don't even know that you've gone to another stage. You because Alzheimer's isn't literally just. I mean, sometimes it's literally one day and behavior is different. Sometimes it's just this gradual, sands through the hourglass, and you have no idea that it's gone to another state. So you don't know what you're even dealing with or how. Or what
exactly.
You're supposed to
and everything's
react
unique.
To.
Everybody's unique.
Everybody's unique in every situation. Yep.
That's right.
And it even says in the liminal state, the facilitating behavior that allows the grief process to further unfold is tolerating difficult emotions. The process can be hindered if painful feelings are avoided or otherwise suppressed. The consequences of this avoidance can result in unhealthy or compulsive behaviors, such as indulging in food or alcohol, angry outbursts, chronic distracting activities, yada, yada. And that's the thing. So it's like, well, I don't want to be here. So how do I get out of this feeling? And who has time to address those feelings because you're putting out the next fire? And that's the
Exactly.
part. And it says, a sense of clarity moves naturally into states of reemergence. At times, family members need to simply trust that eventually, through tolerating painful emotions, the grief process will unfold into clarity and the possibility of adaptation to the new emergent situation. As difficult feelings are tolerated without avoidance or suppression, a sense of clarity moves naturally into states of reemergence in which recognition of a new landscape, inner and outer, enables adaptation to losses. So it's
Right.
like, okay, well, you have to tolerate it and then move through it. And sometimes that's easier said than done.
Right.
But
yeah, and I think those are those losses all along the way that
Yes.
that when they say that it's you die twice, I don't think it's that you're dying twice. It's that there are these little deaths that come before you know it. Like when you're raising a child, there's a certain spectrum. There's a certain spectrum of normalcy, that normal development, and you'll go,
Yeah.
this is this stage, this is adolescence, this is whatever, and then but with Alzheimer's, because everybody is so unique the way that they manifest, and because they are a human being, and that this is not a normal thing, this is a disease. So it presents differently for everybody, even though it's similar.
Right.
So we can't predict what's going to happen, and you do have to no.
You can't label it. Yeah. You
Right.
can't label it and say, "Oh, this is
No.
this."
No.
You can't do that. The only thing that dies really is
Yep.
normalcy
Yep.
dies.
Well,
That's
new
it.
normals,
That
but new
goes.
ones are
And it's
born.
like, okay.
Yeah.
But you have to create a new. You have to create a new one, and
Right.
every moment.
But while you're doing this, you're exhausted.
Every moment.
Yes.
You're trying to figure out how to make the best of this situation. And I feel that with caregiving and with grief, it's the same type of thing, because you're trying to figure this out and go with it. You don't know what to do. You're trying to figure out the feelings. You're trying to, go forward. And it's that same idea. And it's the same thing with people when you're caregiving. It's like, oh, that must be tough. Okay, well, gotta go. And it's the same thing like with grief. It's like, oh, wow, I'm really sorry. I'm out of here. And that's unfortunately what happens, because it's uncomfortable. And anything that's uncomfortable kind of follows that, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's uncomfortable.
Well, we don't want to be there. Most it's usually we avoid uncomfortable situations, right?
Right. Yep.
So, and I think all those states, from what I'm gathering from my research, is that all of those states occur at different stages of this process. Roseanne,
Yep.
since you're a year down the line, why don't you talk about these manifestations, these emotional reactions that happen that are uniquely part of this process?
Well, I've heard the dying twice part aspect of dementia, and I don't know if I ever really embraced that, because there were still times my mother was fully with me. So I understand that thinking, but there were parts that changed. There were parts of our relationship that changed. Of course they did, because they had to. But when I would sit and think, when she dies, it's going to feel like this, and then it didn't. And even though our relationship, and she changed over the course of her disease, when she died, it was completely different. And it wasn't like, I was like, well, I expected this. Okay. It wasn't. Even though I expected her to die, and I knew she was going to die, when she left, it was a smack in the face. And I was shocked. And I never thought shocked would be the word that came out of my mouth. After all of this time, after everything that we had been through together, I never thought shock would be the thing that I felt. And I did. And that's just, it's one of those things where you think you know, you don't know. You don't know
Exactly.
until you get there.
And it's same with me with the number one on the list, right, is feeling numb. And I thought, like I said, I would be in a fetal position and not able to stop crying. And I haven't cried since the day my mom passed. And I was really worried about it. And but there's, now that I'm reading up and I'm learning about that numbness and why it comes on, it really makes so much sense. It's in balance with how much love I have for my mom. Also, is how numb I feel right now, because I can't possibly embrace this right now.
No.
I intellectually know it. I emotionally have not embraced it yet, and in order to function, my cortisol has spiked through the roof, I think.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I didn't know how tired you are from grief, because I'm the ever ready bunny. I can just keep going and going, and I have never wanted to sleep so much in my life, and not during the day, but I mean, when I go to finally fall asleep, I just can't. I'm so deep in it. My body's like, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh,
Shut
totally.
down. Yeah.
Well, and plus you've been, for not only this last 16 years, but even more focused the last 6 months, you have been just running on adrenaline just to get through the day and to go and to caregive every single day and go and go and go and go and go. And it's kind of like, anyone who's done a play in the theater, you work on something for 6 months and you do all these performances and you're just literally running on, you're not sleeping. And then when it stops, your body just goes bam.
Yep.
But so that's why you're tired, but you're now pushing through to get the arrangements done, to do this and to continue on in now your quest to help others, so it's no wonder you haven't had the time to just stop and cry.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And you're still, even after, and I don't know, I felt this way. I was still caring. Still had to talk to the priest, still had to get, we had pre-planned the funeral and all, but you still have to, you got to get the flowers, you got to get the prayer cards, all of that. So all of that, I still felt like I was still on duty.
Yep.
Still going. And I remember leaving, I remember driving home after the luncheon and thinking, well, now what do I do? Now what? Now I'm supposed to...
That's that lack of purpose. That's that lack of purpose.
Right,
We just
because
mentioned.
for every day, and my mother lived with us, so every day my thought was, what does she need? What can I anticipate? How do I do, what logistically needs to be done? What caring needs to be done? And then trying to also have her feel loved and safe and secure.
And balance your own life. And balance your life with your husband and your children, and if you have animals,
yourself,
and everything,
and yourself.
and your career, and your work, whatever it is, you're trying to do that, and everybody that's listening that is a caregiver right now or has been, you totally understand that 100%.
Absolutely.
So, and when it stops, you're like, wait a minute.
Now what?
And it's that item that you said, Dawn, about the relief for the person with dementia and for yourself in some respects. There's such a duality for me with that, because yes, I am relieved. I'm relieved that did I want to be a caregiver? Did I sign up for it? Was I looking forward to that? Fighting the system and being on guard all the time? No, it's not a fun place to be. Did I love my mother and enjoy the process? 120%, 200%. I wouldn't have done it any other way. I would never. I miss doing it. But I also have that feeling that my mom, she was a hero. She did as incredible as she could, and it was time. There was nothing more, and we checked off all our boxes, my mom and I. So I felt okay to let her go, and she needed to. She needed to go. Yeah. So,
and I think that feeling that you have a lack of purpose can also lead to guilt, because then you start thinking, did I do enough? Did I do? You want to feel like you left nothing
on the field.
Like you put it all in, which you did, and I'm sure you both did. But you still have those doubts and fears of that you didn't.
Right.
And that's the amount of different things that you are feeling at the same time No wonder you're tired.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
You know?
And then
Yeah,
it's
and
it's your parent, it's your mommy. It's when you go down to your core of who you are as a human being, no matter how old we are. Our mommies and our daddies are our foundation, our stability. And I find it interesting that you said, Roseanne, you felt like you weren't losing your mom all along the way, you know, in terms of her disease, like you weren't really grieving. And I understand that feeling, because I feel like where my mom ended up in the last days of her life is the woman that I knew. And I wasn't grieving who I lost, because in any situation, in any normal, healthy situation, people grow and change and get older. And you know, I know some people mourn for the, you know, the glory days, but I love every day. So I didn't mourn every loss my mom had. I was aware of it, and I went, okay, so we're at that stage. But I didn't love her any less, and I still loved her just as much. And frankly, the more skills she lost, the more I even loved her more, because that relationship changes and it switches into you becoming their rock and their foundation, and you switch roles. I became mommy in a way, even though she was still my mommy, but I felt such a tenderness for her and pride, and like such filled with joy to see her face every time I walked in the room. So, you know, I miss that lady. I miss the old lady. I miss that. I miss this lady. This is who I miss, right? Can you see her? I miss that little face that's so happy to see me. And, you know, I miss that. I mean, our children grow, and, you know, I love them just at the age they are now, and I will continue to love each and every age. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the two deaths, though, that we were talking about when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's. You mourned her, you know, the other mom a long time ago,
yeah.
and now you're mourning this
Right.
one. So
I mean, it is in a way it is. If you want to look at it in a, I think instead of mourning, is to just acknowledge that they're changing, just like anybody would. You know, we all change. You know, our personalities shift a little, our bodies shift a little. Not you, Don. You look exactly the same.
no,
Yeah,
it's
and
exactly.
you look exactly
shifted.
as I ever knew you. You're shifting.
Shifted.
Yeah, maybe it's just having that opportunity to lean into and surrender into my relationship with my mom gave me that peace of mind, and allowed me to prepare for her leaving. Not that it doesn't smack you in the face, like you said, Roseanne, because God knows it is so primal. It's the most primal thing you'll ever feel. It's like, it's the same as giving birth to me.
Oh, absolutely.
As a woman. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's acceptance too. So, you know, anytime my mother changed, it's like, okay, well, this is where we're at, and you have to go forward. You can't say, well, I don't want to be here. Well, no kidding, you don't want to be here. She doesn't want to be that way either. But
No.
you're accepting and you're moving forward. It would be if one of your friends broke their leg. Okay, well, do you love them less? No, they broke their leg. Okay, well, you go with it. You have to.
Right.
It's part of life. This is part of life, and we have to be able to move through those times, because
And
that's just how
adapt.
it is.
We
Yes.
adapt. We have to
Yes, we
adapt.
do. Yep, absolutely.
I found this article on feeling numb, and I thought it would be helpful for me and whoever else is feeling that way. This is what I found. Feeling numb can be viewed as a mild dissociation process, as a way to cope with loss. Numb grievers don't react with immediate shock. Instead, they're often able to tap into this enormous energy that comes to deal with all the arrangements, the logistics, the comforting other people in the family, taking on tasks in the first few days after someone passes away, you know, so you're basically insulating yourself from all the feelings that you think that you should have or that you will have to protect you
Yep.
in some way so that you remain functional. It can feel awful, and it just causes more stress. Thankfully, what I've discovered is it's very normal, and that makes sense to me because I love my mom so much, and I'm heartbroken. I need to, for me, process in little increments, little bits at a time, and that will be the way that I can manage it better for myself.
But it's really interesting because, you know, you say you're numb and you haven't been reacting and everything, but you also have to look at what led up to it. And because of the ramp, the long runway you've been on for 16 years, and then the more short-term runway, which is more intense, you were grieving all that time. You grieved, and I don't know if you want me to mention the moment right after she passed. It's very personal. And but there was a massive amount of if you want to tell people about it or whatever. I mean, you were not numb. Let us just say you were quite the opposite of numb. And so you have to take that into consideration also.
I think I said death is...
And it was also a lot because of what Roseanne told you to do at the time, which you did. And I think, you know, I don't know if you want to share that or not.
I'll share it because I think it's beautiful. And I think that it was really what gave me a lot of closure, because Roseanne told me as it was getting close, and I told her I made the decision I was going to allow my mom to do what she was going to do. And she said, when it happens, don't let them rush you out of the room. Take your time, whatever you want to do with your mom. It's your time. That was the best advice I've gotten, because when I saw she wasn't breathing, I whipped off my shoes. We were in the hospital. I had made the room beautiful. I had flowers and battery tea candles everywhere. You can't light candles in a hospital. But I had music going, and I just jumped in bed with her. I took all the tubes off of her and out of her nose, and just got to hug on her, love her, which I hadn't gotten to do for months and months, just giving her like a big hug. And she was warm, and she was my mom. And I laid with her for over an hour, and it just was so cathartic for me, and it was such a good goodbye. And I felt I would never have done that. I would have not even thought I had permission to do that if you didn't tell me that, Roseanne.
And Roseanne, let me ask you, because you did give her that advice, because I think you maybe have done something similar with your mother. I feel like because that happened, that some of the, let's say, I don't want to say lack of emotion per se, I think there's a reason. One of the reasons for that is because you did that you got to get out everything.
I think you're right.
I think, you know, you say, oh, I didn't.
I mean, she was covered in mascara.
She was covered, you were covered. It was, I mean, and I think that type, which most people don't do. And Roseanne, I want to know your thoughts if that is one of the reasons why you think maybe Susie's feeling the way she's feeling.
Oh, totally, because it's such a, I mean, they're gone, and it's such this feeling, and it's, I don't know, it's that, to be able to put your hands on her and hold her and hug her like that. You weren't able to do that, Susie, for a long time. Mm-hmm. And to be able to do that, I mean, it's a connection. It just is. And it gives you that opportunity to say, I'm with you. I'm still with you. Do you know? Mm-hmm. And it allows that, it allows that transfer almost to be transferred, to experience.
To let her go. Yeah. I felt like when I said, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm walking away, I was ready to walk away.
Right.
At that point. I was ready to leave her. I knew I had to. I knew I had to leave this time. And I had gotten all the lovin's in that I felt grateful that I could do that. I felt so grateful. She felt like my mom from a little girl when I would give that big bear hug to your mother, and I felt her warm skin, and she felt mushy and soft and lovely, and I kissed I kissed her face and her arms and I just loved on her and cried and Yeah, it was very therapeutic. Very therapeutic. I think about that all the time. Like, that is one of my most beautiful memories. And I am, honestly, guys, I've been afraid of death my whole life. Since I'm 3 years old, I run out of the bed and go, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. I was so afraid of it because I didn't understand it. This was such a rites of passage for me to literally and figuratively embrace it, because I love my mom so much. I didn't want to be afraid of it. I didn't want to be afraid for her. It was like, screw you, death. I'm not afraid of you. I said about my mother, when she died, she taught me how to live, and now she's taught me how to die. And that's a beautiful gift.
Yeah. And that's why I don't think that this numbness, I don't really know if it's numbness. I really don't, because of that, you went through that process. And you may just dive into, other types of grief as you go, and you probably will. But I think this is a huge reason for it. And it's something that, like you said, the most beautiful part of this whole thing was after she passed.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Well, and
statement.
sometimes it's not linear.
Yeah.
There are some tips for coping with dementia grief. And the first is to find a community of other Alzheimer's families in support groups. There's online. Because the single most important, Daughterhood, friends like Roseanne, things like that. This is the single most important coping action you can take to manage dementia grief. You need to be with people who understand your position from the inside out and do not need you to find words to describe what you can't articulate. Because at the time you can't.
100%.
You're talking about describing feelings, and how do you do that? So to find people who understand, number one, do try to find time to mourn and grieve in your own way, whether it's with that support group, you go out to the beach or go to church or the synagogue or whatever. Realize that there are different ways people grieve that are valid, and don't become caught up in what grieving should look like or what other people think it should look like, because that's not important, or what you think it should look like. That's probably the most important.
because we're doing shitectomy.
Exactly.
Remember? We're doing a shitectomy.
I mean, some people need to cry, some need to revisit their memories, some need to pray, some, they express their grief through creativity, and some just need to feel active and useful, and there's no wrong or right. It's possible you may need to or want to express your grief in different ways at different times. It's not one thing. It could be multiple things. And third, learning and practicing mindfulness skills or meditation can be a really powerful tool for managing dementia grief. It's important to understand that dementia grief simply is part of your life. It might be challenging at times, but in itself, it's not that bad. It's actually good. It means that you loved somebody. And because if you didn't grieve, that means you just didn't care, and big deal.
And it's like
Who wants that?
like Aha says in Take on Me, it's not better to be safe or sorry. So either way, if you don't love, you're protecting yourself, you're going to miss out. And if you love really hard, you're going to grieve really hard. And by the way, meditation comes in all forms. I'm not a big ooey-oo person. I dance. And I'm telling you, that is meditation. You cannot think of anything else but what your feet are doing and the sound of the music. And that is meditating. That's releasing your mind from other thoughts. And it is therapeutic. What do you do, Roseanne, to do that?
I always think whatever it is, what might work for you might not work for me. It might not. I still can't go to church. I go to church, I just start to cry, because I always used to take my mother to the church. So it doesn't work for me, and that's okay. So I actually just try to feel and go with that feeling. It's not like I'm making a list of this is what I'm going to do. I really, it's so hard because it's that relationship. And I try to just give myself the space to feel what I'm feeling. And for me, that's pretty big. And then I'm just trying to move forward. I do try to meditate. Doesn't always work for me. I try to breathe. Doesn't really work for me either, but I try. So, I try to just move forward with whatever comes up. And I try to be compassionate to myself and not be like, this has got to, no. I don't have to do anything. If I feel like I can do it, I do it. And if I feel like today's not the day, today's not the day. And that's what I just try to work through that.
Yes. I think that's beautiful because, and I think the one thing that or one of the things that you learn as someone is ending their life, and, you know, especially when they've lost their ability to speak and move, and, you know, basically just dependent on everything, and they're stripped of everything. Yeah. And you see what's important, and nothing is that important but those
Yes.
moments that you're in at that moment. So cherish the one you love, cherish the time you have with them, and just make those memories. Get those memories, because those memories are so important. Those are the gifts that you give yourself as a caregiver. You get those memories. I get those. I have all these memories with my mother that I will cherish for the rest of my life. I will cherish that I love you, that if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have heard it. I will cherish being able to hold her when she passed. I will cherish making her laugh. I will cherish all of the crazy shenanigans I got up to with her just to keep her, you know, because it made me feel good, make her feel good. And I will cherish that. And I hope that you, while you're going through this process, or if you've already gone through it, just cherish your memories, make more memories, know that you are making memories. You're just differently. And just be present. Be present and just cherish the person that you love. That's all I can say. We can't change it. We can't make them not die, unfortunately. But you can make it a beautiful experience. And it will be, just like my friend Roseanne told me.
Thank you for having me be on this. It's a very important topic, and I appreciate being on here with the two of you, and I adore both of you, and I'm happy to be part of your tribe.
Well, that makes her
Group?
Jewish.
Okay.
No. Listen, she's Italian. We're Jewish. What's
Same
the
thing.
difference?
Same
To
thing.
eat, we're emotional, and that's it. Done.
And we love. We put our
We
hearts
do
out on the
love.
pulse. Yep, exactly. So thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Pleasure.
And we'll have to do
of
it again
course.
next time.
Yes.
Anytime you want, I'm game.
We are here at Love Conquers Alz, and Roseanne has a wonderful podcast, Daughterhood the Podcast. We always have wonderful guests and good conversation, and it's not always heavy. It's you know, we try to look at positive. That is, and which it all comes down to love, right, Dawn?
It does. It always comes down to love. And there's one reason for that. Do you know why?
Why?
Because love is powerful.
'Tis.
Love is contagious.
'Tis.
And love conquers alls. And we
It
thank
does.
you for being share, do all those things because you love us. We love you. And we're going to see
And
you
be
next
kind
time.
to yourself. Be kind. Give yourself grace, and thank you, everybody. Love you. Bye.